Welcome back to our study of the Yoga Sutras. Today we are going to discuss a very powerful sutra, Sutra number 15, where Patanjali is going to give us a deeper understanding of the principle of dispassion or vairagya. Let us see how the sutra goes. He says, Drishta Anushavika Vishaya Vitrishnasya Vashikara Samya Vairagyam. Right? Let's see what it means. So there is the Vitrishnasya. There are cravings because of Drishta and Anushravika. There are some things that we see and some things that we hear, and they create a Vishaya Vitrishna. They create some kind of a craving towards an object of enjoyment. And to develop that state of consciousness by which we are able to master over them, Vashikara Samya, by developing that state of consciousness by which I'm able to rise beyond my cravings, that state is what Patanjali calls as dispassion or detachment, right? So the consciousness of self-mastery over one's cravings that are because of what they have heard from the scriptures or some many sources, or that which one has seen directly in their day-to-day life. So that mastery is called as dispassion, right? So let's see how the sutra is recited. Drishta Nushravika Vishaya Vitrishnasya Vashikara Samya Vairagyam. So let us understand this principle of dispassion, which is a very important, to understand this deeper. Let's go back to our analysis of the mind. Broadly speaking, the mind has two functions, cognition and emotion. In the previous two sutras, Patanjali spoke about practice or abhyasa, which mainly deals with tuning the cognition aspect, right? Remember, the nature of this practice was threefold. It has to be long, uninterrupted, and full of earnesty. And that is how we can learn to fine-tune our cognitive aspects, the way I'm dealing with this world, my day-to-day operations, right? I can deal with it. But while I am interacting with this world, I cannot neglect my internal state of emotions. And many times you would have noticed that in the course of your practice, in the course of your day-to-day life, you will notice that while you're doing things rightly, you may not feel things rightly. Your internal state many times hampers your performance in your external state. And that internal state is the emotional side of our mind. And to address that, Patanjali is giving us the next lesson on vairagya or dispassion. In fact, it is this emotion which tends to many times disturb our practice. So even though you may get your routine right, still there will be those days where just because you don't feel right, your internal external routine may go into a state of imbalance, right? So this is a very important aspect. So this emotion, to understand very simply, it's basically an accumulation of your likes and dislikes, right? I like this kind of food, I dislike that kind of food. I like this person, I dislike this person. I like to see myself in this kind of a situation, and I dislike seeing myself in this kind of a situation. Our emotions are constantly swinging between the states of likes and dislikes. And these likes and dislikes, they create our distracting desires. If you're trying to figure out if your mind is really distracted or not, right? Just observe what kind of desires you have, or what kind of thoughts and desires spring up when you try to meditate. That is an indication of what kind of distractions we are carrying in our head, right? To highlight this, I would like to narrate a very funny story. So this one time, there was a person who was, as part of his daily routine, he was sitting and meditating. And just as he was meditating, a friend of his happened to come and knock on his door. Now, seeing that this person is busy, this person's father, who was a wise old man, he happened to go open the door. And when his friend asks him, what is he doing? So he says, actually, he's busy mending his shoes. So can you please come back later? So fine. So this guy comes back again after some time. And again, the father replies, he's busy mending his shoes. Can you please come back later? And this happened back and forth many times. And meanwhile, when all this was happening, this man's wife was, overhearing this conversation between, the man's friend and his father. Why is my father-in-law saying my husband is busy mending shoes, right? I see he's busy meditating. And she gets confused. I mean, what is exactly happening here, right? I thought my husband is meditating. So she said, let me go and ask him personally that, my dear husband, what are you doing? What were you thinking about during your meditation? He says, actually today I have this very important board meeting. And I realized that, the shoes that go with my suit, they are spoiled and I need to fix them somehow. And somehow during my entire meditation, I was only thinking about my shoes, right? Now, this is the story of all of us, right? Any of us who ever tried any form of meditation, you would have noticed that how the mind always tends to distract us. You know, our likes and dislikes, the emotional state of our mind tends to distract us. And this is where vairagya or dispassion plays a very important role in helping us rise beyond these temporary dualities of likes and dislikes. Now, to understand this word dispassion more deeply, like what is dispassion? Now, what exactly creates this distracting desires, right? If you see, Patanjali, he very objectively presents it. Drishta and Anushravita. So what is this Drishta? Drishta means those sense objects that we see, that we perceive in our day-to-day life. You know, every time you're on the way, you're driving to your office and you will see lots of advertisements. And you know, you see something immediately, it sticks into your consciousness and your emotional mind starts creating some likes or perhaps some dislikes, right? Or here Patanjali, by heard, the classical commentators, they say that there are also a lot of distractions that are offered in the Vedas, you know, in the form of some promise of some, you know, heavenly pleasures, etc. Right? Now here Patanjali is indirectly being critical of the Vedic ritualism and any form of materialistic religiosity, right? Because religion and spirituality are not meant just for, or not meant to just deepen our materialism further, but it's to rise beyond it. So Patanjali is clearly talking about, you know, how spirituality has much more deeper goal. So he's talking about, by here, Anushravika, you know, the classical commentators, they explain that even those flowery words of the Vedas which give you heavenly promises, even they can be distracting desires. Of course, in a modern context, we can think of, you know, things that have not yet manifested, but we just hear about, you know, the upcoming online sale, you know, where there are a lot of heavy discounts on all the things that you like, and your mind gets hooked onto that, you know, or some brand new upcoming product, you know. So the materialistic mind, it gets very easily attached to these distracting desires. So the idea is to transcend these distracting desires, and that's where dispassion plays an important role. But the moment you think of, you know, transcending desires, we may falsely interpret dispassion means actually giving up desires, but that is a very incorrect understanding. Actually, dispassion is not lacking any kind of passion in life. You know, we need some passion, we need some internal drive. But many times what happens is these distractions, they weigh us down. And therefore, actually, real meaning of dispassion is it is distraction-free passion. And that is the mode in which we need to operate if you want to be successful, whether be it in your yogic practice or any other aspect of life. And therefore, Patanjali is trying to bring all the practitioners to that right internal emotional state. You know, act with dispassion. Does not mean you lack any drive, but rather now don't let your drive become distracted by these petty worldly allurements and cravings, right? And this is the right understanding of dispassion. So dispassion does not just mean giving up your desires, but rather becoming indifferent to those cravings that are there within us. And how do we come to that state? Very important. Discrimination is the key to enter into that state of dispassion. And this discrimination comes when you sharpen your intelligence, when you regularly tell yourself, these are my real goals of life, these are the distractions. When you keep your intelligence finely tuned, when you keep reminding yourself every day of your real priorities, right? That is how we strengthen the discrimination within. And with that discrimination comes, a very strong internal state of dispassion, right? Another fear many times people have is, you know, if I end up, you know, becoming very rational, functioning just purely out of discrimination, you know, with the complete state of dispassion, right? You know, will that impair my functionality in this world, right? Will I become like a stone? You know, will I become almost like a machine? Don't these cravings and passions make me more alive and make me more humanly? Right? Many times we cling on to that inner cravings because somewhere we feel alive because of those, right? But rather it is not true. In fact, dispassion is not at all impairing, but rather highly empowering. Right? As I mentioned earlier, what weighs us down in life many times are our attachments, are our cravings. And when you act out of this mode of dispassion, you will see, you will actually perform much better than what you would otherwise do when you are troubled by these cravings, right? Another nice, experience that I'd like to share. I once met a very interesting person who was a very renowned adventurer, winner. He set many Guinness records also for being the first human to circumnavigate the entire planet Earth without using any kind of fossil fuels. He purely did it on human power, right? To cycling, kayaking, in a boat, etc. So he once shared a very interesting story that when he was crossing across the Pacific Ocean, at some point in his journey, he started encountering very strong counter currents, right? And because the counter currents, his boat was constantly being pushed back. Now, because he was using human power, it was a pedal boat, and he was pedaling his way across the ocean. Now, when you're pedaling, you can't keep doing that 24/7, right? So he was pedaling for about, say, 16 hours, and he would sleep for 8 hours. Now, what these counter currents did, during the 16 hours, imagine if he had gone ahead by 10 miles, in the time when he would sleep, the waves would push him back again by 10 miles. And literally, he went back and forth for almost a week in that same spot, completely stuck. And can you realize he did this at a time when he didn't have much, communication technology, no satellite phones or nothing. He was literally stranded in the middle of the ocean. So at that point, he really started feeling a sense of despair because he was running out of fresh water. His food stocks were limited. And he thought, if this continues further, I think this is the end of my journey. And at that moment of deep despair, he was reminded of this very powerful verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. You have a right to perform your duty, but do not be attached to the result. And when this verse came into his mind, that basically this verse is talking about this mood of dispassion. When this verse came into his mind, he suddenly felt very empowered, right? What happened to him? He said, forget the record, forget all the glory, forget my attachment to all the press reporters who are waiting on the other side to take my photograph, right? Forget even my so-called friends and family who are waiting there to receive me. He said, let me just focus. At this point, my work, my whole life mission is just one thing: left pedal and right pedal, left pedal and right pedal. That is all I need to focus on. And he said he felt so empowered because of entering into a state of dispassion that his performance started enhancing. Now you see, nothing changed. Neither the intensity of the counter currents changed. It is not that some external help came and pulled his pedal boat across. Nothing changed in his life, but there was one tiny change. Because of that focus, he was able to operate without any distraction. And earlier, if he was doing 10 miles ahead and coming back 10 miles, because of that state of focus, he was able to enhance his performance by a tiny notch. Instead of 10, now he went 12 miles ahead and came back 10 miles, covering up 2 miles on day one. And likewise, again, 12 miles ahead, 10 miles back, covering up 4 miles by time day 2. And like that, it took him about 3 weeks to fly himself out of the counter current zone, survived to tell this story, and went on to set that Guinness record. Right? This is such a powerful and inspiring story. If you think about it, what dispassion does, it is not that anything changes in our life, but rather when we are able to apply ourselves with the right focus, free from all the distractions, that are actually weighing us down, then we will feel empowered. In a sense, what we are all doing in our life is we are trying to participate in a marathon, carrying, tens and of kilos of unnecessary burden on our back. This is how attachments, they weigh us down in our journey. What dispassion does, it empowers us by literally snapping out all those extra weight that we are carrying in our head. Attachments are like that. They're just an extra burden in our head. And when we enter into that mode of dispassion, right, with a nice, cool, light, level-minded head, we can actually proceed towards our desired, goal of life. And this is what Patanjali is, imploring to all of us, that if you really want to be successful, abhyasa, practice is good, right? But during your practice, don't let the emotional state of your mind derail you. Develop this mood of vairagya or dispassion. And that is how we can experience that empowering state of dispassion, like that. So, and the key to rise beyond and feel that empowerment is compassion. To rise beyond our internal cravings, a very powerful quality that we can develop is the quality of compassion. Because that is what we see in the lives of all the great, spiritual preceptors, messiahs, acharyas. How were they able to give so much to the world, right? Is because they rose past their own internal cravings and their own attachments because they wanted to give to the world because of their compassion. Of course, compassion can be a very lofty standard for us, but at least we can develop some level of selflessness in our day-to-day affairs, right? That is how we can rise beyond our petty attachments and our cravings. So with these two keys, we can actually really internalize this mood of dispassion, and you will see what a change your life will take. You will start seeing that what seemed impossible otherwise will start becoming possible in your life if you just learn to empower yourself with this quality of dispassion, like that. So this is what we saw in this particular sutra, very powerful sutra. We saw in the previous two sutras, abhyasa or practice, it helped us in refining our cognition. And in this sutra, we saw how dispassion helps tune our emotions. Then we saw how dispassion does not mean losing our ambition, does not mean losing our passion in life, but rather it is pursuing our ambitions, pursuing our goals without any distractions. And the key for that, we said, was developing an internal state of discrimination. And we also saw how dispassion is not impairing, but it rather is very empowering. And we said the key to enter into that empowering state is by developing an internal state of compassion, or at least begin with some level of selflessness, give up that greed, and you will see how beautiful life will become, right? So these are the very powerful lessons that Patanjali teaches us in Sutra number 15. In Sutra number 16, another very powerful sutra, Patanjali is going to give us an insight into what this whole yoga process really is about, and what is this perfection of vairagya or dispassion. So stay tuned to hear more from Patanjali's wisdom. Hare Krishna.